Cultures Mandala. Yardbirds who you were kind of like very fascinated with, and you know, and I keep
Right.
I'm from southwest London as well, and you know, Jim McCarty, the drummer and things, went to the same school, so I'm from that part of the world, and you became so on the social, so people are knowing about you. You're in London, you've gone you're mixing with the pretty things. So didn't you mention you saw the Who perform as well somewhere?
Yeah. This third night I was there, I was taken by some beat writer, some musical writer. I forget his name, Les or something, and he took me to the Starlight Ballroom to go see the who I'd never seen, but I'd heard their song "My Generation" in America. So he takes me to and we get in there, and you know, because he knew the band, and we got to be right in the front. Not really in the front because it's a little dangerous in the front.
Yeah.
And so and then we got to go in the dressing room and hang out with the guys, and I was really impressed. I mean, it was like so much better than American bands.
Right.
It was 1,000 times better than American bands.
What do you mean
you know?
when you say an American band? What kind of band do you mean? What do you give an example of the type of music?
American rock bands.
Okay.
At the time, the Love and Spoonful, you know, the Byrds. These guys were so hokey and rinky-dink
Oh, okay.
that when they went to England, they sounded like a joke, you know. When you hear the Who, or later Jimi Hendrix, or any of the Creation, any of these guys, this is an enormous sound. This is exciting. I mean, and then stuff like breaking your equipment and smashing your amp and kicking the drums into the. I mean, it was like so outrageous that you know you couldn't even dream of that in America.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's interesting. This again, if we go to that period, because I would just listen to that tape the other day, which has the Misunderstood in it, and you see all the different things that were happening. You know, Cream, the Who, and you know when
Right.
I'm 10 years younger than you. I'm sitting at home watching all this happen on my television set. You know, and it's this morphing in England from mods to hippies that happens through '66. It's quite interesting, you know. You at the beginning of '66, then the middle, and then when you get to the end, hair starts getting longer, the fashions start to get different. You know, it's gradually.
Well, it's a
happening.
big fashion difference though. Like you know, like when I was in UK, you know, there was the mod scene, and there was the rockers and the mods, and the rockers were basically American greasers, you know, style.
Yeah.
They were the the British version of greasers, and the mods were the cool cats, you know, and so. We were all dressed up like the mods, and we were thinking, you know, that was, you know, there was nobody that was a slob like the hippies. I mean, the hippies were just slobs, you know, and so like the Grateful Dead, you know, they had a guy named Pigpen. I mean, the whole thing was so hokey, you know. And in England, it was like everybody was really stylish, and even to be a hippie was a stylish thing. You weren't just a slob, you know. And so there was a lot of style in England. And when I went back to America, there was no style. I mean, I went to the Love-Ins at Golden Gate Park, and all these bands were just slobs, you know?
Well, look, let's face it. When Jimmy,
Like the cross between a gypsy and an Indian cowboy, or I don't know what they were, you know? But there was nothing mod about it. There was nothing... I saw psychedelic as being kind of a fashion statement also. And there was no fashion. It was just a bunch of slobs, dressed like gypsies, you know?
well, when Jimi Hendrix, as you know, when he came to London, just about, you know, he came in September. You were there in the summer. Stuff was going on. His whole, you know, wardrobe he got from Carnaby Street and King's Road. He got the whole look. It was all the fashion, you know, was happening in London. The style.
There was a place where we all bought our food. There was a place where all those kind of psychedelic bands bought their clothes called Granny Takes a Trip.
Exactly.
And that's where we went shopping, and that's where he went shopping, and that's where all the bands like, you know, the Creation and the Move, and they all went there to buy their stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Granny Takes a Trip.
Yeah, and then and then Carnaby Street there was Lord John. I remember as Lord John as well. There was that as well. Okay, so while this is happening in London, you've Okay, this deal that you signed with Polygram, no, with Fontana, sorry.
Oh no, Fontana.
Yeah. So what was that contract? What was the deal actually? What was it? When you signed the line, what were they asked? What were they expecting from you, and what were you expecting from them, or to happen?
No, there was just a two-word contract: fame and fortune. And they had me sign under the fame part, and they signed under the fortune part, and there we go. Typical rock and roll contract. Now, honestly, I don't even have a clue what it said, because Rick Moe, the drummer, was our guy that read that stuff, and I could, for me, there was fame and fortune or failure, and there was no question of anything else. And for him, it was like, okay, he'll read the details, and he said, okay, that's so cool, and all right, so if Rick Moe says it's cool, then it's cool, We weren't lawyers.
There we are. You're in London. It's 66. You've arrived around July. The month, the contract is there. Okay. Yes, that was the question about. You signed this contract with Fontana, with Fontana, and the media. Tell me about that. Where all the media came. There was a kind of presentation. Can you tell me all about that? So once they've got the package, obviously they've made these recordings, and maybe you can just talk about that recording before we talk about the contract, the recording, and the song that you're most famous for. That's kind of is that "Take Me to the Sun." And so maybe you
Children of the Sun.
Children of the Sun. Yeah. Maybe you can talk about the different songs and why, and that is the song that really John Peel in his commentaries has said that that's the song he gets the most questions about, and people who are fans of that period, musicologists, and even my friend Crispin Kulasheka, his keyboard player, said, "Oh, the Misunderstood, yeah, man, they're fantastic." So there's amazing how many people do know about you, most probably more now than they ever did. And so maybe you can talk, and I know all of this has been discussed by the other podcast people, but maybe just cover it and then and explain a little bit about that, because many of the Krishna people who are listening don't know about that.
No, Children of the Sun was, Tony and I wrote these songs together when we were all living in the basement. And then, these are about, becoming aware of a spiritual life. To Children of the Sun was the people who are becoming aware of spiritual life and refusing to kill other people for no reason or for any reason, and losing interest in the pravriti marg.
Explain what is the pravriti marg.
That's the path in material life of ever deepening entanglement with karma.
Yeah.
And Nibriti Marg is the path of ever decreasing entanglement with karma, or rather exhausting old karma and not creating new fruitive activity. So the whole idea of psychedelic was, wake up to this nonsense of the warmongers trying to lie to you, and realize that spiritual life is eternal, and that this body is just a temporary thing. And so spiritual life became, I didn't know about Krishna and I didn't know about God, but there was this, but I knew that there was a spiritual threshold that we needed to go through, and that was the basis of the song, Find the Hidden Door, and I Unseen. These were our song. Children of the Sun was about the movement in the world of people turning towards that. And I Can Take You to the Sun is kind of a message to anyone. In particular, it was my girlfriend back then, who I was trying to convince her. I wasn't really trying to convince her about taking drugs as much as I was trying to convince her to stop being so mundane. And in America, people don't even know what that means, because that's all there is mundane. And so it was all about that message. So we recorded these songs, and
when you said
Philip's studio.
Sorry, you say that. So Greg is the master guitar player, but
No, Glenn.
Glenn. But you're writing the
Greg is gone. Greg is gone.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But you're writing this. When you write a song, or you were writing songs then, what was the chemistry? Did you come up with a word, or there was a riff, and then you worked together? Was there any standard way, or did it just? How did they develop those songs?
Well, I wrote all the lyrics. All the lyrics I wrote, and then Glenn and Tony was a guitar player, and he was also a songwriter.
Okay.
And so in some cases I would come up with a riff, or I would think of a riff, and I would sing him a verse, and he would put the riff in. And so we were just doing these things together. And it's like in the case of "I Can Take You to the Sun," I actually played 2 chords on a guitar. I couldn't even name them, but I mean, I was able to go back and forth on 2 chords, and make the vocal line myself and sing the lyrics myself. And then I showed it to the guys and or to Tony, and he would start playing it. And that was a song actually where we decided we're going to make an electric song, and at the end of it we're going to switch into a folk song with just an acoustic guitar and one singer.
Okay.
Go from electric rock band into a folk song, and we did it all in one song, and we could do it live too. We did it live. So anyway, when they decided they're going to release release the songs in December, Fontana Records, they don't have that many big acts. Like if you get signed by a company like that, and they decide you're going to be the next thing they're going to push, well, you're going to make it, because they're going to make sure that happens. Yeah. And so we were that band for '67 for them.
Right.
For '66, they had They had a band called the Trogs.
Yeah.
And then. And so we were going to be their big push, and so they invited all the media in UK and some of the British and some of the European media, like about 50 people.
Where to?
All the critics.
Where did they? Where was that held? That reception
it was held in Philips Studios, in Stanhope Place, which is in London near Marble Arch, and that was the biggest studio in London. They had opened, and it was 4 studios, and they made it into one, and they had us set up at one end of the room, where below the control panel, and they had all the people in folding chairs at the other end. And in another room, they had champagne and hors d'oeuvres and all this kind of garbage. And so we were being interviewed by the people, and they're asking us, what about drugs? Hey man, find your own Candyman.
Did you do a gig there for the media people, or was it just a kind of?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you do?
No, they invited everybody to come. We just did 4 songs. We did 4. We started out with we did Children of the Sun. We started out with My Mind, a song called My Mind, and then we segued into the Trip, which was a musical thing we did about inner mind. And then we segued into Children of the Sun, and then we segued into I Can Take You to the Sun, and that ended just with Tony and I sitting on the floor, just playing acoustic guitar and singing in one person. Okay. And all the people are sitting there in 50 chairs.
Right.
And they just loved us, they loved us. And you could really tell because after we played, they were really, and then all the media started producing news that was just like, everybody loved us,
Brilliant.
And so, because a lot of that media is still around. That was all.
When was that actually?
Melody Maker. It was December '66.
So that was December. Was John Peel back in England then at that time or not?
No, he was not back yet. Wow, he didn't come back until '67.
Okay. So then what happened? What was December, you'd got this ready, and then what happened to you?
And then we had that reception, and the news was all over the place, and meanwhile, Tony and I are just living together because they had moved us into these expensive places by Regent's Park. And so the 3 of the guys were in one place, and Tony and I were in another place. And
why did they do that?
Working on music, and
was that because you had the contract and had some money?
We got a different manager because the record company didn't want to sign with that guy Nigel, and so we got a different manager, a rich guy. And so he put us up in these nice places. And
what was his name?
His name was David Swainson.
Okay.
And he was brought in by our road manager, who was named Peter Saunders, who later became the road manager for Jeff Beck Group, using our equipment. And so they put us into these nice places, and which is a whole story in itself. But all of a sudden we were in these luxury places next to Regent's Park. And Tony and I are living together, and so I'm not even paying attention to the record. This record's out. We already did the reception, and we're having to go interviews almost every day. And same time, we're sitting around writing new songs and making all these plans for the light show, and just getting stoned and making music. And we weren't really going out much.
At that time in London, the Marquee was kind of taking off, wasn't it? It was a kind of a showcase for new bands as well. It was a kind of bit bigger.
Marquee was the place.
Yeah.
Marquee was the place.
Bigger than Knuckles.
Marquee was the place.
So where did you...
Knuckles was nothing. Marquee was the place. If you wanted to be seen by important people, that was the place you had to play. And that was where first place we did play. And after Knuckles we played. After Knuckles we played another gig with Alexis Corner. At some private mansion,
Mm-hmm.
without a stage, and it was like a wedding or something, and all these rich English people out in the country, and Alexis Corner's blues band played, and then we played, the two of us played, two bands played together, just blues.
For those people who were
then
watching...
we played the Marquee. Then we played the Marquee, and after the Marquee is when Greg quit. And went back to America, and Tony came in. Tony heard us play there, and I'm talking to this guy I'd never met, this British guy, and he's hey, wow, he was really impressed with our gig, and I told him, yeah, we're losing our guitar player. Do you know anybody? He said, I play guitar. He had been in a band called The Answers before us.
Okay.
And so and subsequently he was in a band called he was in a bunch of different groups, but so. Wow, you're a guitar player? Yeah. So he and I, I took him back to the flat, and we started playing, and he was like immediately, he was like 10 times better than the old guy, and he could have been the lead guitar player by himself. That's how good he was. And he was really a professional. He really, everybody was, when we got to England and we saw The Who, we saw these, and all of a sudden we were like becoming professional.
Okay.
Like I heard, I remember Rick Moe, when he heard The Who, he heard, that kind of drumming. Mm-hmm. It's just like a revelation to him. You can play drums like that,
Yeah. It must have been such
or that it was allowed.
Were you on a social level? Okay, you've hung out with Viv from the Pretty Things. Were you the other members of the Yardbirds? And you said and what was who were the other people that other musicians might know? I mean, Pink Floyd were just also starting there. Didn't someone mentioned that they came to see you at the Marquee? Was that?
Yeah. They didn't have a record yet, but they were up and coming. They were in the news, but they didn't have a record yet.
Yeah.
But who was we hung out a lot. We hung out a lot with Mick Wayne, who was a guitar player for a bunch of Fives, and with Viv Prince, the drummer. I hung out a lot with Viv, and hung out also with some of these folk singer guys, and Donovan's gang, and like Bert Yance and Davey, what's his name?
Davey Graham.
We called him Davey Morgan. Yeah, and so we're hanging out with these guys and getting stoned and making music and talking about the prospects of this whole new revelation of life, and so it was a very exciting time to be alive because for me it's like if you got a band and you're singing a love song about some guy, boy meets girl. I mean, you couldn't have a more boring subject in terms of. What could be less exciting than something that boy meets girl? I shouldn't say that, but it's like, what could be more mundane? It's like, there's nothing enlightening about it, And so that's what I liked about the Yardbirds. They had a message. They had "Mister, You're a Better Man Than I" and "Shapes of Things," and these were revolutionary songs where they were singing about justice and about all the things that they're trying to push these days. Back then, those were the things that we were already pushing. So remember, "Mister, You're a Better Man Than I." That song, that was the lyrics are just amazing. "Mister, You're a Better Man Than I."
So you kind of arrived in the middle of '66 in England, and then you've been there.
Right.
So June, July, August. You get to December. That's quite a few months you've been there now. So when, and you were about to be taken, and there was fun. They were behind you and pushing you, and the media. Now that record, what actually it was released? Right. The misunderstood. And what was the single? What was the thing that the?
I Can Take You to the Sun.
I Can Take You to the Sun.
I Can Take You to the Sun. And the B-side was Who Do You Love?
Okay, Who Do You Love?
Which is our version of the Bo Diddley song.
Yeah, I like it.
Totally different version.
Yeah, it's a good version. It's everybody knows that song. It's a really good song.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what happened to the? You were just about to take off. It's the end of '66.
Oh yeah. They're getting new, they've ordered this. They're getting new equipment for us, all Marshall amps, and they're doing a lighting system based on our concept of the lights. And all this stuff's happening, and then I get a letter in the mail from my dad saying you're drafted.
Did it?
Okay. And I had, and I didn't. I wasn't paying any attention to that. And so he's saying if you don't come back, they're going to indict you. Whatever the heck that means.
Was that a second
like,
letter?
Yeah, man,
did you get the first letter and you just kind of ignored it, and then you got a second letter?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got. He was forwarding letters to me, and finally he was forwarding letters from the draft board. And I'm like. I'm in England. It's the other side of the world. Back in those days, the world was big. Remember?
So your father
I'm on the other side of the world. How they got to do?
Your father being a military in the in the Air Force, what did he think about you, his son, going off to fight in Vietnam? For him, was that an honourable thing, or what was his view on it? Or your parents?
He was a military man. It's your duty. It's just my duty. And I'm like, well, why don't they just have an election? He said, because then the North would win. I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? I mean, well, they're communists. I'm like, well, maybe they want to be communists. What's wrong with? Can't you have an election and let the people choose what they want to be? And so it really it wasn't even a question of the North and the South, because the South was like this puppet regime that America had in place. That if you took America away, they would fold in 20 seconds because they had no money of their own. The people didn't support them. The North outnumbered the South by a huge number. And after years and years of fighting to drive out the French, they had finally succeeded. And here's this ridiculous America coming like the Redcoats,
So...
What?
So, when was it that you suddenly realized, shit, I really do, my dad's persisting, and you made the decision? What actually happened when you?
He said you're going to be indicted if you don't come back.
Okay.
And so I had to show that letter to the managers and to the record company.
Okay. And then what happened?
And they had a meeting and said, okay, well, you're under contract to the record company. You're under contract to this British management firm. You can't go to the army. You're under contract in a foreign country. So here's letters, and we'll give you a ticket to go back there and give this to the draft board and come right back here. That was the plan. Okay. Give this letters to the draft board saying this man is under contract. He can't play your stupid war, and come back and let's go. Let's continue. And the band was waiting for me to come back.
So you actually, what was the date that you left off when you arrived back in America to face this story?
The end of January.
Okay. Now,
or February, like that.
I'm just going to give a little historical context of the timing of January '67, because it's a fascinating moment in this whole story, the context of where this is happening. So this hippie psychedelic it's growing in California, it's growing in England, and it's going through '66, and you've just arrived in January. Now, right in the first weeks of January in San Francisco, not in LA, they had the first human being. It's the first big gathering of the counterculture. There's Timothy Leary, Allen Ginsberg, Gary Schneider. Timothy Leary makes his famous turn on, tune in, drop out comment. Allen Ginsberg's there doing mantras. And then literally a few days after that is when Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, makes his first visit to San Francisco with Allen Ginsberg, who was just on the stage with the hippies, meeting him at the airport because he's met him in New York. And then within a week or so from then, they're at the Avalon Ballroom, joined Allen Ginsberg, Bhaktivedanta Swami, Janis Joplin, and all of these. So you've arrived, but you've arrived back in America while that's going on in San Francisco. It's brewing, okay? Now, so because your story it's going to involve San Francisco as well, So you've come back now. This letters that you have from your now. The band members, they're still back in England. You've come back for the draft, and that you're kind of like, see you soon. I'm just sort this all out. Show the letters, and I'll be coming back. That was in everyone's mind.
That was the plan. That was the plan. That was the band's
and you
plan.
were confident of it and everything. But then when you came to back to America after having all this amazing experience in England, did you actually go, like the first day? Did you have to kind of go to the, I don't know, what was the what happened to you?
Well, first day I had to go back to my parents' house.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any clothes except the rock and roll gear from Granny Takes a Trip.
Yeah.
I just didn't have anything else, Mm-hmm. And so I'm wearing the purple pants and the paisley shirt. And my dad's like, couldn't stand it, Mm. And so I said, okay, I'm out of here. So because John Peel came and picked me up, and then I went and stayed with John Peel.
Okay.
And he flew me up to San Francisco to meet one psychiatrist.
Okay, and
I think we paid some guy $50, and he wrote some letter saying this guy is a drug addict and a nut job, and he can't be in your war, which is like almost a guarantee you're going to be on point.
And then what happened? What was the result of that?
So then I came back, and then I finally went to the draft board to go give these letters, and I gave these letters to the black guy at the desk. He looks at these two letters. He leaves these British letters from the record company. He looks at them and he throws them in the garbage. He goes, "That shit ain't even American."
Maturas Mandala.